Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to yet another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com, and I wanted to make a video reflecting on all the chaos from this past weekend, the Chiefs game, how the seeding fell into place, the other games that went on Sunday that had implications on the Chiefs seeding and who they face in the postseason. I'm going to have a Steelers preview for the playoff game later this week. I don't want to do my preview this early in the week, but I will discuss a little bit of my initial thoughts on that matchup. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So on Saturday, the Chiefs defeated the Denver Broncos narrowly, 28-24. Now, I did have a post game on that game. If you guys want to go and see and listen to my thoughts from that game, I've already gone into all of that. Yeah, it wasn't the prettiest game ever. It reminded me of last year's Atlanta Falcons game to end the year. I'm not going to put a bunch of stock into it. All the Chiefs had to do was win and get out any way possible, and that's exactly what they did in that game. So I'm not disappointed by the result or anything, and I'm not particularly worried about them in any aspect. So they should be fine. But they won that game, which still kept them in play for the first seed in the AFC. But what they needed to happen was the Titans losing to the Texans, and this is a game that I watched most of yesterday, and the Texans really broke my heart, man. Whenever they defended that first drive from the Titans and it ended in a missed field goal, I was like, oh my God, God is on our side for this. He's going to give this game to the Texans, but then the Titans went up 21-0 in like the blink of an eye, and I'm like, well, this one's over. I turn it off. Then I see on Twitter that Davis Mills threw a touchdown. It's 21-7. Okay, kind of interesting. And then they scored again, and they cut the lead to a one-possession game. And then they scored again, and they got the two-point conversion, and it was a three-point game. And I'm like, oh my God, this is actually going to happen. But no, they did just enough to keep you interested, and then they ended up blowing it in the end. And I got to say, I'm not a Texans fan, but watching that game, I couldn't imagine being a Texans fan, man. I mean, that team's defense is terrible. I hated the offensive play calling. They ran the ball too much. I thought they should have just let Davis Mills cook. I thought they wasted a lot of time trying to run the ball, even though Rex Burkhead has had a really nice season for them and everything. And he got a well-deserved extension too. But heck, even he was making plays in the receiving game, and it's like, man, they should just be throwing the ball. And that was the only way they could really beat the Titans. And what really lost the game for them was they had Ryan Tannehill wrapped up on third down and somehow let him escape, and he converted it for a first down. That essentially ended the game. That can't happen if you're the Texans, and the Chiefs' hopes for the 1 seed basically died right there. So the Chiefs became the 2 seed. The only question was who they are going to play. There were a ton of different scenarios that could have played out, but there was one very wacky game on Sunday, and that was the Colts and Jaguars. Somehow the Jaguars beat the brakes off the Colts, so they're out of the playoff picture completely now, which didn't seem like it was ever going to be the case. But hey, it's the NFL. Anything can happen. So Jaguars win that, Colts are out, and then the Steelers beat the Ravens. So now the Steelers are in, and the Steelers look down and out at one point, which just shows you how wacky and how much parity is in this NFL season, because the Steelers, I mean, look, they're not really a threat. If we're being honest, they're not really a deserving playoff team, but that's just the way the seeding fell. So the Steelers are in, and they are going to play the Chiefs unless, of course, the Raiders and Chargers would tie. And the Raiders and the Chargers capped off a crazy day, and it was a weird game. It was a fun game. I didn't watch all of it, but I did catch the end of it, you know, the best parts. And I got to say, I'm glad they didn't tie, because I actually think that the Steelers are an easier opponent in the playoffs than the Raiders. All we needed was someone to win that game, which seemed to be asking a lot towards the end there, because it looked like they were actually going to tie. And I got to say, I think what happened was it actually looked like they were going to tie. The Raiders were going to let the clock run out. And then Brandon Staley, the Chargers head coach, called a timeout, which forced the Raiders to say, hey, you know what? Screw it. We're going to win the game then. And that's exactly what they did. They could have held the ball and both the teams make the playoffs. And honestly, I'm surprised that they didn't do the thing where they both just kneel down 15 times so they both make the playoffs. I was surprised both the head coaches didn't meet at midfield before the game. And you're like, hey, you know what? we got injuries, you got injuries, let's just both knee it out and we both make the playoffs. Like, no need to play this game. Why play an extra game just because? And honestly, if they did that, I would have liked it too, because it would have been a big FU to the NFL for creating this 17-game schedule where only the first seed gets a bye, because I've got complaints about that. I think it's really dumb. And I think that the new playoff format didn't exactly create the fact that the NFL was looking for. I also think Rich Bisaccia, the Raiders interim head coach, should actually be in this discussion for Coach of the Year. It's insane that that team is in the playoffs, and it's insane that they were ever still in the hunt to make the playoffs after everything that's happened to them this year. Heck of a job by him. And then Brandon Staley on the other side, he's got major questions to answer. Everyone crowned the Chargers a few weeks into the season. They were minutes away from beating the Chiefs at home and pretty much locking up the AFC West. And then they're not in the playoffs anymore. And Brandon Staley seems to have analytics himself out of a playoff spot. And I wonder how much analytics being factored into your decisions is too much. Because I think, again, that happened last night with the horrendous 4th down call and all that stuff. And then at the end, going forward on 4th down, and look, they converted on 4th down. I think it was either in overtime or right before overtime. It was like 4th and 9. They convert, but they were in field goal range. And if I'm Staley, I'm like, look, I'd much rather kick that field goal and you tie and both teams make the playoffs than, missing the playoffs. Because look, if you tie, you still make the playoffs. I don't know why you would factor in a scenario where you're much less likely to make the playoffs. It's weird. A lot of people were crowning Justin Herbert too. He was getting a lot of Mahomes comparisons. It's really, I'm not saying Herbert is a fraud. I think he's a tad overrated though. Because look, Justin Herbert had a super talented offense. Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Jalen Guyton, Mike Williams. He had a really good offensive line with rookie Rashawn Slater. They had Corey Linsley this year. That was a super talented offense. Bright young head coach who I think maybe outdid himself a lot of the times, but still a good young head coach. And yeah, their defense was lackluster, but Patrick Mahomes at about the same age, his first year starting, he had one of the worst defenses of all time. The most first downs given up, lost Kareem Hunt halfway through the year, and took his team to an AFC championship. And here is Herbert in year 2 with a similar situation, but a year of experience on top of it, and he doesn't even make the playoffs. I don't want to hear that dude compared to Mahomes any further until he can do something. That Texans loss was horrendous, and that really took them out of the playoff picture. That loss to the Texans, I mean, that was inexcusable. You'll never catch Mahomes losing a game like that. I mean, yeah, the Chiefs started out the year rough, but they didn't have any bad losses, like losses to just horrible teams. The Texans are a horrible team, and you just can't lose to them and be taken seriously. And the Titans almost did the same thing. They almost blew that game to the Texans, and that's why I'm not super afraid of the Titans. Yeah, it sucks not getting the 1 seed, but the Titans aren't some huge foe that the Chiefs can't take on. I'm not scared of them at all. But yeah, anyway, the Raiders win that game, which is good, because if they had ended that game in a tie, then the Chiefs would be playing the Raiders. And even though the Raiders are still a beatable opponent, it would be the 3rd time they're playing them this year. It's a rivalry game, and I actually think the Raiders are better than the Steelers, who the Chiefs will be facing as the 7th seed. Not Derek Carr. Ben Roethlisberger is god-awful. I know it's his whole farewell tour and everything. Doesn't change the fact that he's been terrible this year. The Chiefs absolutely owned them in the first matchup. Melvin Ingram, it'll be his 3rd revenge game this year. He's faced the Chargers, the Steelers, and now he'll be facing the Steelers again. But yeah, you know what? My initial thoughts on the matchup are, I think this is as close as you can get to a bye week. The Chiefs don't get a bye week, but they play the Steelers. It's kind of wacky to think that the Chiefs drew a game in which there's a scenario where the starters are out by the 3rd or 4th quarter. I mean, again, that's as close to a bye week as you can get playing the Steelers in the playoffs. They're just not a threat. Their offense is just god-awful. I know the Chiefs' defense struggled against the Bengals and a little bit against the Broncos. I don't put stock in that Broncos game. They just got to clean a few things up, and the Steelers won't be a problem. I mean, that offense is pitiful, guys. You saw the last time these two teams played. I mean, the Chiefs blew them out without Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill playing like 10 snaps. Byron Pringle was their leading receiver, and they blew these guys out. I know it's a second matchup, and sometimes things look different the second time, but the Steelers are just such a vastly inferior team, man. They don't have it. I would be very surprised if the game is even close. This is another game where the Chiefs just got to hope to make it out with no one getting hurt. They had an injury scare at the end of the Broncos game with Kelce in the hip, and Tyree Hill injured his heel in pregame. Hopefully those guys are okay. You would have really hoped to get the bye week because you want to give those guys a week to heal up, and Andy Reid off the bye week and everything is, a revelation. But yeah, I mean, the Steelers, that's about as good of a matchup you can get considering the Chiefs have to play on Wild Card weekend. I'm also glad the game is going to actually be on Sunday Night Football, because the Saturday game really threw off my schedule. It keeps me from doing a post game. Usually I work on Saturday, and then also it's on Sunday night, so I got most of my Sunday to relax and get stuff done, and then I get to sit down and watch the Chiefs play postseason football. So yeah, that's all I got. Those are my thoughts from the weekend. I'm looking forward to this matchup. I'll be previewing it later this week. Maybe I'll have Michael Darcy from KC Sports Report back on. I've been wanting to talk with him, and maybe Lucas Murphy as well. I'm not sure what he's up to, but yeah, guys, that's all I got. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. Leave your thoughts down in the comments. And lastly, make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. But I'll see you in the next one.